very much. This is the water panel, and I'd like to introduce Iris Stewart-Frey, who is a professor in the Environmental Studies and Sciences Department and co-coordinator of the Environmental Justice and the Common Good Initiative here at Santa Clara University, which is one of the presenters of today's panel, in addition to SCU Enact, Students for Environmental Justice. Iris is a hydrologist and a tool maker, and her work intersects with human rights and environmental health, climate, and water justice. So she seems to me to be the ideal person to open this panel with these three wonderful guests who are going to share a bit about themselves and why water justice is an important part of their lives and what kinds of projects they're working on. If I had to acknowledge what Iris is capable of, it would take too long, but I'd like to say that she knows where all the water is, where all the water was, where all the water is going, how much water is available, what it is doing, what it is not doing, and how much of it is drinkable and why. So she is wonderful at finding the right questions to ask. She poses a couple of questions on the department website that I think would intrigue anyone and that I love because they bring into focus the myth of total progress on all fronts. Let's face it, some things have progressed in this world, but if anything brings into focus the failure of cumulative knowledge through time making life better, it might be the climate crisis itself. Her questions are, why were there water systems from 2,000 years ago that function better than the ones we have now? And how is it in 200 years we have managed to lose half of the topsoil of the Great Plains, which took hundreds or thousands of years to form? So in asking great questions like this, she inspires all kinds of research interests and studies the water cycle, the water supply, groundwater pollution issues from shallow groundwater, surface water processes that are related to climate variability and climate change. So she's a big picture thinker with a heart and a mind for social justice, and I'm so pleased that Iris could be with us today. So thank you, Iris.
Realize I'm still muted. Thank you so much for the introduction, Kristen, and hello to everyone, and thank you for being here this morning. To all the things you alluded to that I know of with respect to water, my only response can be, I wish. I wish that we knew that we that we have this knowledge, but I even more so wish that we had the ethical, moral, and spiritual guidance to treat that water in a way that's sustainable and that is equitable and just. It is a real honor this morning to be moderating a panel of several water people that have been quite influential internationally in improving water access and water justice in the world, and to learn from their experience and to think jointly about intersections. Where can we find solutions? Where can we move forward? Through my own work, I've been involved in climate, water security, and water justice issues in the Central Valley and in northern Nicaragua. In the Central Valley, disadvantaged communities are threatened by droughts, which are thought to become more intense and more frequent with climate change, and as well as contamination from agricultural chemicals. So we have people right here in California whose wells are going dry, who have to buy water by the bottle from the store. In northern Nicaragua, communities face struggles around water access through small water systems, and those are particularly vulnerable to climate change and very much connect to the food security of these communities. I want to start us off with our panel with some very short introductions, and then allow our presenters to tell us more about themselves and their work. And I would like to start us off with Anthony. Anthony Akpan comes to us from Lagos, Nigeria today, and he's the founder and president of Pan-African Vision for the Environment, or PAVE, in Nigeria. He has over 15 years of experience in human ecology and sustainable development issues, and his work is spanning NGO management, government, civil society, private sector, and international development agencies relations. PAVE is a partner with tUrn through the United Nations Paris Committee for Capacity Building, and it is quite an exciting organization, and I'm so much looking forward to hearing more about this important work. And with that, welcome, Anthony.
Thank you, Harris. Thank you, everybody. It's a great pleasure to be part of this great initiative. We'll try to address what are issues in our little way. Well, I founded the Pan-African Vision for the Environment some years back, out of the curiosity to try to raise environmental awareness, not only in Nigeria, but on the continent. So we discovered that the environmental awareness on the African continent is very low. And one of my courses I did in my university brought the issues of water pollution, environmental chemistry. My children level exposed all those things to me, and I tried to say, okay, I can try to take an initiative to try to address that. It's still a very big challenge, on the continent. So it's a great pleasure to be part of this panel to share what we've been trying to achieve, my little experience across the country, the continent, across the world. I've been privileged to participate in so many international panels or conferences and all that to just present papers. So it's really interesting for me, and I thank Christine so much for giving me this privilege to join the panel, and I look forward to sharing more about the little things we have been able to achieve here and what we think going forward. Nigeria as a country depends on oil, and oil is like our mainstay for our national revenue for the country. And the world is driving towards renewable energy. So it is a challenge, and the government has not come to terms with the new reality about renewables and the sustainable development goals, and how all that ties to water issue in the context of the present pandemic, which you are telling people now, wash your hands regularly when you don't have water facilities at people's home. So it's a big challenge, but we are trying to raise the advocacy and raise the awareness. So it's a great pleasure, and I look forward to speaking more later in the program. Thank you so much.
Okay. Wonderful. Thank you so much, Anthony. Our next panelist is Dr. Teresia Hinga, and she's a professor of religious studies here at Santa Clara University and a longtime collaborator of Kristen's. Teresia was born in Kenya, and her research focuses on religion and women's issues, particularly in Africa. African religious history and expression in the global religious landscape, religion and public policy, and the ethics of globalization. Teresia has been creating water justice events since tUrn began in the fall of 2019. So welcome, Teresia.
Thank you very much. I just want to thank Christine and Santa Clara for its focus on issues that are close to my heart, the issue of sustainability. As you just mentioned, I come from Africa, specifically Kenya. And so when I speak and think about this issue, I bring that perspective. I also come to this as a woman. Water and food are issues close to women's hearts because they are supposed to feed their families. They are supposed to fetch the water and clean up their families and give them water to drink. And as a woman myself, I have already participated in this quest for just water in a practical kind of way from my childhood. So for me, this is it's a personal, not just academic kind of subject matter. I also bring the gendered perspective because collectively as African women theologians, we gathered together in 1989, just on the verge of the fall of Berlin Wall, and decided to work together collaboratively to name and shame and seek solutions to issues of concern, particularly for women. Our organization is called the Circle of Concerned African Women Theologians. We meet every 5 years, and each time we meet, we decide what's the theme for our next 5 years batch of research. And I'm glad to report that this panel is right on the money, because in 2019, when we last met, they determined that sustainability is going to be our next major collective collaborative research. So I will probably be reporting to them and saying, Christine has organized this panel that is that they would be very happy to endorse. As Christine says, I have participated in sustainability matters on campus. I usually bring students as well as local communities, not necessarily local communities of faith, but communities from Africa, Eritreans, Ethiopians, and so forth. And we do joint programs at the Forge Garden. We have watched films together. We have planted trees at the Forge. And so this is my passion. This is a major opportunity for me, for me to participate in the context of others similarly concerned, and for which I am grateful.
Thank you so much, Teresia. That is very powerful to hear about your art. Let me introduce our third panelist, Dr. Phil Thompson, who comes to us from Seattle University, where he's the director of the Center for Environmental Justice and Sustainability. Professor Thompson teaches courses in environmental engineering and economics, and he's the faculty advisor for the Seattle University student chapter of Engineers for a Sustainable World. So he's very much looking into practical solutions and currently studying the removal of metals from drinking water with pyrolyzed agricultural waste materials, biochar. He will be speaking about his projects in Nicaragua and Thailand, to just name a few of the places where his research has been influential. So welcome, Phil.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Iris, and Kristen, thanks for the invitation to be here with all of you here this morning. So as Iris said, I've been teaching at Seattle University. Well, actually, this is my 24th year at Seattle U, and I've been teaching courses in drinking water treatment and wastewater treatment, hazardous waste remediation, as well as an engineering economics course. But I think there's so many young people here today. I thought I would share, how did I get involved in drinking water to begin with? And so I was a sophomore at the University of Iowa, and I needed a job. So my parents told me that I needed a job. And so I was looking for one, and I found a job washing dishes in an environmental engineering lab. And I remember washing dishes in that lab, and I was thinking to myself, what could I do with this environmental engineering water? Maybe you could bottle water and sell it. And I was like, nah, nobody'd ever buy bottled water. So anyway, graduate students started to graduate, and my boss at the time, he said, Phil, would you like to learn how we do some of these different water tests? And so I said, sure, that sounds more interesting than washing dishes. And so I learned to do a variety of water testing, and eventually my boss said, Phil, would you like me to pay for your master's degree in environmental engineering? I said, sure, that sounds great. And just one thing led to another. I did well. I learned that I really loved learning about how we test water, about water quality, water supply. And I ended up going for my PhD, and here I am. Gosh, well, if you count up all the years, It's a lot. How many years is that anyway? I don't know, 33 years or something like that, that I've been in the water business. And so as Iris told you, I'll be telling you about some of the work that we've been doing at CLU over the past many years.
Cold outside?
With Engineers for Sustainable.
Cold outside?
So I'm gonna go ahead and stop there,
Yeah.
and we can continue with the panel. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Phil. Each one of you gave us a really unique perspective and a broad overview of your work and what brought you into this important focus of water, climate, and justice. And now we're going to move into the main part of the panel, where our speakers are going to share with us about their work in the world, about their commitments to improving water quality and access, how their organizations are protecting water quality, preserve water quantities, and work on issues of water justice. They each have a unique perspective and approach informed by their knowledge of both local and global conditions. And I think it will be very fascinating, to hear those cross-cutting themes. And we will start again with Anthony and with your work developing the NGO Pan-African Vision for the Environment in Lagos, Nigeria. And Anthony, please share with us more detail about your work and what has been significant about it for both the local and the global community.
Thank you very much, Iris, once again. I think, it's very nostalgic for me, when I look back at where I'm coming from and where I am right now. It's very nostalgic in the sense that, I have my first degree in applied chemistry. And like a young man growing up, like Nigeria is a oil producing country. I thought I would get a job maybe in one of the oil companies, and I become a rich man. But along the way, I did all the tests. I didn't get into any of the oil companies, unfortunately. And then I got into one youth organization. I volunteered, and I was working with one youth organization. Then I was just reading the dailies one day, then I saw a headline. It was a headline that says, looming, that was like, I think in 97 or 98, looming global water crisis. I was like shocked. The looming global water crisis. I couldn't fathom it. I read the article. I photocopied it, I printed it. I was like, it was all reflecting in my mind. And they mentioned global water partnership, blah, blah, blah. But it brought me to my consciousness that really, what is the problem in the world, is a problem. Then that was where the initiative started from. Then I wrote to the Global Water Partnership in Stockholm in Sweden, and they included me in their mailing list. And, then I started getting documents and attending meetings, and from there, I got more awareness about the global water crisis in the world, and particularly how it's really affecting Africa, and zeroing down to Nigeria. So we begin now. When I came back, we begin to look at the issues of what kind of policies are in place. What kind of water policy do you have in place? Is water affordable? Is water accessible? So these are issues. In your world where you live, water is not an issue. But recently, I think I was watching the news, the recent crisis that happened. I don't know if I'm correct, maybe in California, where you had this extreme weather situation where all the pipelines were frozen, and there's no water to people. But yeah, we don't have all this kind of extreme weather. But it's just that we have issues of governance, um, adequate resources to the sector. So yeah, in Nigeria, and I can confidently speak for the other countries on the continent. Priority is not given to issues of the environment, so it begins to bring issues. So we what we are trying to do, we are not government. we have some people that are elected into some offices to carry out specific functions. So, what is the primary purpose of governance? Safety and security of the citizen. And how do you secure that safety? Water is a key aspect of one of those things. Water, once there's water, then you can guarantee sanitation, particularly for girls. You know, in this part of the world, some girls don't go to school because there's no water facility in their schools for them to when they're on their period. You know, so those kind of challenges. So what I've tried to accomplish over the years is just to raise the profile of how water is so much important in the centrality of the SDGs. How do you achieve the SDGs without achieving the water SDGs? It's not possible. Water is so interconnected with poverty alleviation, all other related issues like SDG 1 to SDG 17. They are so interconnected. So we try to use water to tell people that once you invest. I did my MSc in the Netherlands. I did my postgraduate in the Netherlands. I studied water management. And in the Netherlands, I got to understand that, you know, water is a key priority for the government. But in Africa, what is important for them here is security, because you have a lot of terrorism and all these governance issues. They've not gotten their governance. So before they now start telling you about water issues, like, it's like a non-issue to them, to our officials. So we want to try and put the water matter on the agenda, and very interesting that the team this year, the team for this year World Water Day is valuing water. How do you, once you understand the value of water in your various perspectives, in business, in governance, in schools, in your homes, in society, culturally, then appropriate policy measure will be put in place to begin to really see how this will be a top priority. So what we're trying to do right now with this team is we're trying to really make people understand how is water valuable to you in the context of the current theme of this last year World Water Day. So once you begin to understand how water is valuable to you, maybe your religion, in your household, in your work, your whatever domestic affair you find yourself, or then you begin to see then how you begin to take necessary measures. So that's one aspect. So one significant issue we're trying to do is sometimes they've been trying to, like, the policy we have now here is the private sector PPP, private sector participation, and water. The government here now is looking at water from the economic perspective. Water must be paid for, which we all agree, but not at the detriment of its own other social services. Water is not an economic good on its own like that. So you have to encompass it in the whole totality. You know that by the time you bring private sector players to begin to look at water and deal with water, they are profiteers. They want to make profit as a business. So currently, the government is trying to, like, invest in infrastructure, and I just bring in some kind of management team that just, but people are not saying comfortable with the whole power. I can tell you, like, I live in Lagos. My house, for example, I can tell you from where I live, my house, we have a borehole. I don't drink that borehole because it's not clean. I only use the borehole to bath, maybe, and wash. Then the other water I drink, I buy it, maybe bottled water or sachet water. So there are a lot of issues going on, particularly in developing countries, so that they do not realize the centrality of water in the scheme of global development. How water is central beyond drinking, water in agriculture, water in energy. water in so many other areas of activity, maritime, all those kind of that awareness is not there. So that's one of part of it we're trying to also do. And this year is also the year of the decade for the ocean. So part of what we are also trying to do, because they are always that where we are trying to link everything. The year of the ocean, the decade of the ocean, 2021 to 2030. So we're trying to raise awareness, not just in Nigeria, on the continent, ocean literacy. Do you know what the ocean brings to you as a human being? Do you know what you do to the ocean? What are the issues? What are the steps you take that affect the ocean and how it affects you? All those kind of things. So want to raise one of my major our major program for the next decade, for the next 10 years is to raise ocean awareness. Ocean, I want people begin to understand the resources that the ocean give us. There's extreme fishing, there's overfishing. They begin to bring marine protected areas. Although once people begin to have that awareness, then I think like anything, once you begin to advocate and begin to speak about it, then we begin to educate because most of our lawmakers are not knowledgeable. I'm sorry to say, most of our lawmakers are not knowledgeable on this some of these issues. So it's left for us. We are not government, though. The government is government. We are put. It's not easy. You see, the way governments look at civil society in this part of the world is like we are like enemies. Not like you're part of the world where you are partnering. Like maybe okay, this okay, we know this organization, they can do research on this issue, then they can bring results and we can work on that result. But yeah, you know, government is still looking at it because we are coming from military era. So I see once you raise any object, if government do any policy now and you raise objection to it, that hey, I think you guys should do it like this. You think now you're opposition. They clamp down on you. So the civic space, the civil space in Africa, not just is in fact globally is shrinking. It's shrinking. So they don't want to hear a third opinion. And they forget that why they are in government is to serve the welfare and the security of the citizens of the various countries they are governing. So I try my little best to write article, we do publication, we do workshop, we do symposium. Just because of this COVID, this past period, we've not been at the international fora since. I think the last international event I attended was in early February 2020. It was when I came back that it was lockdown here. So basically, water education, ocean literacy, environmental conflict. I'm sure you've heard in the news how there's so much conflict in the northern part of Nigeria where you have the headers, the headmen, um, trying to bring their heads to the southern part of the country. The northern part of the country is a drought-prone area, which is part of a key climate issue-related matter, and they don't have, and the Lake Chad region has been shrinking, so there's no water. So,
yeah,
sorry,
Anthony, thank you so much for all the info. This is.
Have I passed my time?
I just wanted to make sure that we can also get to hear from our other panelists.
All right. I'll just get into the mood. Is that right? It's okay. Is that right?
So what I mean, as our listeners will get an appreciation for, water issues are very, very complex, and we could all go on for hours about them. Unfortunately, we don't have that time quite this morning, and we want to get to the questions and answers as well. So thank you so much, Anthony, and let's move on to Teresia. Sharing about her important work here.
Thank you very much. And in the interest of time, and to make sure that I at least highlight some of what you call the complexities of this issue, I'm going to share screen a very quick PowerPoint that has kind of images and themes that I would like to highlight in this like 5 or so minutes that I have got. It is a very complex topic. And I want to start with what I said earlier, that for me, this is not an academic issue. It's a very, very personal issue. One of my earliest memories as a girl child is with my with a water barrel on my back, just like that child that you can see. Can you see the PowerPoint? Can you see the PowerPoint?
Yes, we can. We
Yes.
can, very well, very nice.
Yes, I fetched water from the age of 7 to when I was in college. And that involved walking up steep hills with a barrel like that and walking almost 2 kilometers. And that is the lot of girl children and women in Africa. And so my approach has been a gendered perspective for that reason and based very much on experience. Earlier on, you mentioned that, you know, we are a blue planet. We are a watery planet, but only 3.5% of that water is usable for drinking or agriculture. So we need to be aware of that reality. We behave as if we have all the water and all the time in the world to spend it. That's simply not the case. We began by reflecting on the declaration. I love that part of our proposal. Our program. It reminded me that the water crisis in Africa, from which I speak, is linked with historical injustices, particularly the history of colonialism. Very much giving the example of Kenya. Kenya was colonized by the British and totally revolutionized in terms of its land and water use. I come from the part, Kenya is 80% arid or semi-arid, except the central part, which are called the Central Highlands. Today, they are called, the historians call them the White Islands, precisely because the settlers found them conducive for their life, nice climate, nice weather, good rivers. They came in and settled there, but they totally hijacked the land and displaced the locals, the Kikuyu people who live around Mount Kenya and so forth, and also revolutionized land use. You see there the image of cash cropping, that's coffee. If you stand in front of my mother's house, you see miles and miles of coffee being irrigated with the sprinklers like that. Colonization also meant the forced relocation into villages. I was born I want to say the time, but the resistance to colonization led to heavy-handed action on the colonialist part, and they relocated everybody, particularly from the Central Highlands, into villages. Historians have harsh words to describe those villages. They call them the British Gulag in Kenya. It's like concentration camps. And that meant that 5,000 people are clustered in one place with only one water well. And that created a water crisis that has continued up to the present. What are some of the factors that exacerbate this, what I call a global crisis? We have the problem of privatization, commoditization, and pollution of water. One of the analysts that has really worked on this whole problem is, at the global level, is Modi Barlow. He wrote the book Blue Gold, upon which the film Blue Gold, highly recommended, that I have shown on campus, is based. And in this book, she points out like about 3 or 4 transnational corporations control the global water supply. We can count Nestle and Coca-Cola and Pepsi among those global transnational corporations that control the global, they have hijacked it. Water is polluted in the process of oil mining, our other addiction, fracking. They say oil and water don't mix. In Kenya, there was a big discovery of an aquifer in northern Kenya, but simultaneously there was a discovery of oil in the same region. And I wasn't quite sure whether that's going to help the Turkana and the Samburu people, some of the most impoverished people in Kenya. Industrial waste, you've spoken about industrial waste and sewage. Nairobi is the capital of Kenya. It was built by the British right alongside River Nairobi, Masai, for the place of cool, sparkling waters. They used to bring their cows there, and they would be taking their cows up and down the country. Nairobi is unusable right now, undrinkable. You can't even wash clothes in it. It's totally polluted because of the industrial and sewage right now. One of the ways in which we have tried to manage the disparities and to distribute the water according to our wishes is to dam rivers. In Africa, some of the, it's generally very dry, but we have some magnificent rivers like the Zambezi, like the Congo itself, and of course the Nile. So dams have been created, but to help humanity manage water issues. My problem is that dams are a blessing simultaneously and possibly a damning or damnation, or not the opposite of blessing. And some of the biggest dams are in Africa, like Kariba Dam in Zambezi, on the Zambezi River, and the problems of spillage and flooding. Right now in Kenya, this whole story of the ambiguity of dams came alive like 2-3 years ago, when they decided to build yet another dam to feed, so that they can pipe the water to Nairobi to feed its 4 million or so people. And they always promise, oh, you are going to get pipe water and so forth. And they all end up, the locals end up being displaced, and they don't get the water, they don't get any compensation, and their water crisis starts or worsens when a dam is constructed. So I would like us to consider the whole question of dams. In recent years, water, which is supposed to be life-giving, has become troubled waters. I'm referring to the way in which the hydraulic cycle has become chaotic, and we have random droughts and cyclones and hurricanes carrying with them a lot of destruction and so forth, massive loss of life, and every day, sometimes we do not have attention. Right now, we are so focused on today. Actually, is the ratio issues, the trial on Floyd and so forth. And so these issues of climate change have taken to the back burner, and yet they are some of the most life-threatening kinds of situations that we face. Denial, they say, sometimes they're in the back burner because of denial. And they say denial is not a river in Egypt. Denial is an attitude of our mind. But is there a possibility of just water, what I call just water, justice in the area of water? Is it a mirage? Is it like we see, like we think we are seeing water in the desert, or is it a real possibility? And my answer is yes, it is possible. There are many efforts to reclaim water justice, resisting commoditization, reclaiming the water commons. One of the things I meant to mention is that before colonization, indigenous people's attitude to water and land was that water is can never be a commodity. It belongs to the community. And if you struck a well, you are clearing bush, and a spring springs up, that's not your spring. It belongs to everybody who needs water. We've lost that. But their efforts, Wangari Maathai has taught us the importance of reclaiming those values that will heal the world and heal ourselves. And in this case, the question of water. If I can go to the last slide, Pauline, where do we go from here? I think that the biggest step we need to take is to acknowledge that we have a problem. Many people behave as if water is here forever and in plenty. We can bathe, we can swim, we can wash our cars. That's simply not the case. We have very little water. Taking responsibility at a very personal level, one of the things I promised myself is to reduce my own water print. Within 5 minutes, between taking a shower, brushing my teeth, flushing the toilet, I've used our villages, households, a weekly supply of water. Needed to reduce that water print. And in the interest of time, I borrowed shamelessly from Modi Balo, Blue Gold, who has cited or recommended that to address this crisis in a meaningful way.
Yeah, thank you so much, Teresa. This has been super powerful to hear about your own experience,
yes.
In Africa, and connected to, those, leading thoughts about, water justice and addressing the water crisis. I'm hoping that we can put the book recommendation and the recommendations into the chat, and they will be in the recording. But I want to make sure that we can hear from Phil as well.
So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Teresa. This has been amazing. And Phil, the mic is yours.
Okay, thanks everybody. So I'm just going to zip through this little story here that started about 17 years ago. See here in northern Thailand. So just north of Chiang Mai, about 3.5 hours in the foothills, about 5,000 feet elevation or so. You can see here where there's been some deforestation because people are cutting down trees so they can boil water. So our original project with Engineers for a Sustainable World involved building a dormitory for these 50 or so kids who lived about 5 hours from school. And so their families essentially sent them to boarding school. So you can see this was their kind of traditional housing, kind of tight quarters for 50 kids. And so we built a dormitory, 3,000 square feet, bathrooms, bridge. We did a kitchen facility. But throughout all of this, we realized, what about drinking water? So on the right-hand side, we have a bottle of unopened drinking water and storm water that they were drinking. So I just want to remind us all that approximately 2 billion people are relying on contaminated water every day for their drinking water. So, but this is just a reminder here that we have a lot of people around the world with really bad water. And so this is what motivated us to try to help people around the world back in 2004. So here's a medical clinic in Thailand. I won't tell you too much about the drinking water treatment system other than it produces a lot of water per day, and this is for treating surface water. And there's this initial cost that communities just can't afford. And so I go around and I try to raise money to at least come up with the capital costs the communities can afford the annual operation and maintenance. So our goal has been to help medical clinics and schools. And this water ends up being 11 cents for 1,000 liters. So just think about how much you pay for a liter of water. A liter of water in Thailand that is about 25 cents. So we can meet an individual's 2 liter per person per day water requirement at a cost of 6 cents per year. So it's really an inexpensive way to bring water to people. I should mention all these materials are available locally. Where possible, we try to rely on groundwater. So this is the well that we're celebrating. And in another part of Thailand, most recently, we supported a school that has 1,000 students at it. They're using 3,000 bottles of water a day at this school. They were. So this is a wonderful drawing that the school principal sent me. I just wanted to share this. But they were relying on groundwater that was just undrinkable because the well was just too deep and the water was very salty. So we helped them purchase a reverse osmosis system that they can maintain because, as I said, they were buying 3,000 bottles of water a day. And so that budget easily covers the operation and maintenance costs of this reverse osmosis system. So our model really is to support schools and clinics, have these partnerships, local materials, and then local businesses that are going to maintain those systems. There's $1.3 billion of failed projects in sub-Saharan Africa. And that's because people with good hearts, don't follow up necessarily and help those communities maintain those systems until pumps break and no one replaces them. So we're really trying to avoid that by having partnerships with businesses. We've kind of developed this model here. We're a small business. We're gonna come up with the money to support these medical clinics and schools, and then we're hoping the community can support the cost of the operation and maintenance. So we transferred this model then to Haiti. So I've been working in Haiti since the earthquake in 2010. I have partners in Florida, and we work with a school called Haiti Tech. So here, Haiti Tech, they do everything. So they're training plumbers, future plumbers and electricians to install and maintain these treatment systems. We've done 5 schools and 4 medical clinics over the years. I just love this photo. And right now we're working on a project in a place called Cité de Soleil in Port-au-Prince that's going to support a medical clinic. So you can learn more about that at the Center for Environmental Justice and Sustainability. Both Teresita and Anthony mentioned agriculture. And so this is an organization. So my friend Jemson on the far right, he runs an orphanage. So when the earthquake hit in 2010, his family basically decided that they were going to start an orphanage because there was a big need. And so we helped them put in a well, not only for drinking water, but for agriculture. And so they've been supporting themselves during the pandemic and selling this produce. And so it's been a really great story. And related to that, our work in Peru. So this is in Lima, Peru. Did you know Lima, Peru gets less than 1 inch of water a year? So water quantity is just as important as water quality. And so it's a coastal desert. And right in the middle of this is an oasis. It's a technical school, Catholic technical school, Juan Pablo II. And we've worked with this group to put in an aquaponics system. So where you grow fish and vegetables in the same greenhouse environment. I love this project. These students just took the ball and ran with it. They set up a composting system so they could grow worms. So vermiculture, so that they could feed these worms to the fish, because fish food is one of the most expensive parts of aquaponics. I love taking this waste, this compostable material, turning into food for fish. They built this amazing system. I just love these photos of this beautiful produce they've grown. Had some Seattle U students work with them to connect some sensors so we can real-time monitor the water quality, the pH, temperature, dissolved oxygen, and so forth. And it's just been a great project. So we're in the middle of helping them. They've purchased some land and they're going to expand this project to help the community. So I guess at the end of the day, you know, my message is building partnerships, local partnerships with businesses, sourcing all materials locally, just kind of setting these people up for success wherever we work. And at the end of the day, if you want to get involved in water projects or having water solidarity from afar, you know, you can join Rotary or Rotaract. They do water projects all over the world and locally as well. There's lots of need locally for lots of different things. And then, of course, you can always support an organization like Splash or water.org. So that is around the world in a minute. And I apologize for my dogs.
No, thank you, Phil, and Teresia and Anthony. This has been really a whirlwind journey around the world, and you know we've heard about the effects of colonization on displacement around water, about not having access to enough water, but then also places that Phil was showing us where there may be enough water, but there are so many issues around water quality. And a lot of local solutions.